I thought we would continue regarding what we were talking about last time, that all popularly accepted ideas have got to play to, have got to appeal to hometown sentiments. That is, included within that, they must be provincial, parochial, locally prejudicial, and thus it is that the New York Mets are always going to be outsiders, they're always going to be interlopers in Chi-Town. Nothing can be done about it. Out-of-town info will always be the foe. Out-of-town info will always be the opposing team. This is in direct conflict with what the intellect, as you should be able to see, is wired up to believe. That it all fits, it is all so just that it will almost take somebody else's breath away when you see it. that the less a crowd, and there are cities, there are places on this planet, some of them apparently out there, but many of them in here, inside of your own DNA's recollection of history. But there are places where the intellect is of less guiding importance, believe it or not. Hard to fathom. There it is right here in DeKalb County, Georgia, or in New Jersey or Alabama or Southern California and other places that we don't want to go into. But there are places, always have been, still are, where the intellect is of less importance. In such areas, the intellect is held to be less important. In such areas, they do not have the debate, tacitly or otherwise, over whether man has free will or not, of whether people can change their behavior. And if you get into an area, if we tried to imagine, very hard to do, if you tried to imagine at the other end of the spectrum, say from Western Europe or the United States, circa 1990, into areas at another extreme where the intellect is of no great consequence. If you have people engaged in uncivilized behavior, what we call criminal behavior, the more you get into areas like that, the more inclined they are for someone to turn around and say, did you spit in the sidewalk there? And maybe the person looks like, you talking to me? Or something like that, and they shoot him. No debate. I don't mean just on the spot, but there is no intellectual debate in that city, in that locale, on the basis that human life is precious, or that perhaps the person has had a very unhappy childhood and probably very spotty toilet training. It's the only reason he is now attempting to hold up his fellow man. No discussions about it. It is simply on the basis that behavior that is unacceptable is unacceptable. And the cure for it is to unacceptabilize the person who does it. You just kill him. Or tell him you've got 5 seconds to get out of town. If you're faster than a bullet. But the more you live in an area, which life is more and more through man, living in areas where the intellect is of the supreme, or a larger, if you want relatively speaking, a larger compass, paradigm, template, the more the intellect is held in esteem. The more human behavior is seen as being open-ended. That is, that people are not automatically driven. And thus there is a question of how much of uncivil behavior might be genetic and how much of it is caused by untoward circumstances of one's economic, political, social position. Beyond all of that, though, is this, that no matter where you are living internally, in a more uncivilized area in your own nervous system or in a more civilized area, there is one thing certain. For the intellect to operate at all, you not only have to have information that appeals to, that is, ideas that play to the home team sentiments. You have got to not only have the home team, you have got to have visiting teams. There has got to be out-of-town info show up for you to boo and oppose. Physically. Those of you that can already see this, can already see it. Has nothing to do with psychology, has nothing to do with social aspects of varying forms of information from culture to culture, it has to do with the fact that things will not work in the 3D world without opposition, that the intellect could not operate, did it not have some dichotomous operations electrical in it, that you would not have any language if you didn't have two words. You get to have one word, whatever the first word is, the second word is an anonym for that. And if you don't understand that, the second word doesn't matter what it is, but there's got to be at least a second word. So that you start out and your first word is something real important, like cheese. And the second word has to be something such as asphalt. It's got to be something so that you now know that cheese, at least, is not asphalt. That is the opposing team. That is where the booing comes in if someone tries to serve you a pizza with an asphalt topping instead of cheese. I don't guess we should whip this symbolism to death. But you literally, everyone's intellect is operating on the basis that there is a home field, there is a home team, and that is what the old ordinary intellect takes as being decent information. It's not absolutely correct. It's correct as a person as wonderful as you are can get. But for that to happen, there has got to be visiting teams. You may be a die-hard White Sox or Cubs fan. Only live. But you've got to have the Mets come in. There's got to be somebody to come in on the home field and oppose the team. You cannot have home team, hometown sentiments without there being visitors, a visiting team. This, what I started to try and get you to consider, flies absolutely in the face of what the intellect does believe, that there is an open end. The more you live where the intellect is of increasing importance, the more the intellect says that things in its purview are probably infinitely pliable. It is wired to tell itself that there is increasingly forms of precise information to such a degree that they're not even open to question. That, by most accounts, is what science is about. Is to get to the point, such as with mathematics, that 2 and 2 is 4, and no one in the three-dimensional universe that would pass for being intelligent would naysay that. That the intellect has this ability. It is just taking longer than we expected, they might say, for it to get from the somewhat drab areas of mathematics into more fascinating areas such as everyday human nature. So we get very specific. They believe, without knowing it, if they took this symbolism any further, what they're saying is the day will come that we can get out and play a game with no opposing team, with no prejudice in the full sense of the word. That is, we will all show up here in Chicago, that the whole world will be Chicago, and we will show up and they'll be capable, there'll be a game going, but we'll be there and there'll be no visiting team to boo. Just simply, the White Sox will walk out and we'll all realize that's it. We've been searching for truth, goodness, and decency, and all along it's been the White Sox. And that's all there is to say. And in some way, of course, I'm simply describing, regardless of you people who are perhaps more attuned to hockey or basketball, I'm describing what the city has always referred to with other terms as paradise, heaven. Be a place where there is no opposing team. If there is an opposing team, they went to the other place. They went down to the minor leagues. They went down to the hot shot league. It will be a place where there, in some way a game will continue to go on, but with no visiting team. That is, no opposition. Which, any of you who have the slightest notion of how your own brain works by now, and if you don't, doesn't matter. You do understand that the brain will not operate at any ordinary level. There is no way to think without there being a kind of internal scoreboard going on. There has to be something to push against. They believe there's a final score out there. There is something that some of you might find, before I abandon this particular symbolism, that you might find interesting if you considered teams like the TKS team, this kind of stuff, and then the other team of everything else. This kind of stuff has got no hometown. Thus, this kind of stuff got no home team. Thus, this kind of stuff has no, I assume you know what I mean by this, they use it in the city, no home field advantage. If indeed one was called for, if one was apropos. What that gets to is that this kind of stuff can't ever get a leg up on ordinary knowledge. This kind of stuff cannot slip into the ring while ordinary knowledge is over there flinging to the crowd, and like any good professional wrestling bout, exhibition. This kind of stuff cannot jump the other guy from behind. It's not possible. And yet when people think that they are in pursuit of, if not within sight of something unusual, some kind of extraordinary knowledge, off on some great mystical quest, that the secret, if they find the secret town, not Chicago obviously, not New York, it's got to be outside the regular fields of competition, but if they found it somewhere, the secret would have a supreme home field advantage. But this kind of stuff doesn't even have a hometown. So there's no such thing as a hometown advantage. That is, there is no such thing as a contest between this and everything else. There's no way to keep score. There is no visiting team. Now, part of what this seems to be about, and it seems to be us standing here having these meetings that we've been taping recently, and then it seems, once you see that this is simply a reflection of what you should be doing anyway, that it starts out, and apparently you are in competition. That what I'm going to do is drive out the bad information. Now, I'll do my own version of one of those, do they still call them rules or theorems in the great, wonderful world of economics about bad money will drive out good money. If you understand the basis of that, which has enough 3D validity for it to continue to be passed about, then you could say, well, wait a minute. I could take my own inverted version of that, and if I get enough new, fresh, revolutionary information, it will drive from my neural marketplace all this cheap, counterfeit information. I'm not saying there's no validity to that. I'm saying there's no validity to that for the ordinary information, the ordinary brain to start out and take that as being valid information. That in some way the information I've got, the ideas I've got are faulty. But they're faulty as thing specific. In some way I've received bad information, or in some way ordinary intelligence has been clouded through some kind of curse put upon man, or some kind of false evolutionary step we took once the dinosaurs died out and we didn't have anybody, to help lead us along. And so now the new information I seek will straighten me out. It will take the opposing team and humiliate them. We'll trounce those suckers. It'll be 1,027 to nothing. The world's greatest no-hitter. Don't ask me how it would come out to be that score, but that's the imagination, and it's not possible. It is possible in the 3D world. That is how progress seems to be made in the secondary world, not just the primary world, not just any possible primary evolution of humanity, which is not enough consequence to talk about in anybody's lifetime normally, but would be a kind of expansion in the secondary world. And here, if this were to happen in one person's lifetime, then you would see that there was no opposing team. This does not oppose, this does not play against what you ordinarily do. It's in another ballpark. It's in another ballpark that has no hometown. That's why this kind of stuff has no locale, has no name. It is not nationalistic. It is not religious. And of course, many times it seems to be, but I thought we covered that last time. That this kind of stuff has no hometown, has no description. But if it does, it's not this stuff. You guys admit that about covers it. And I don't mean just what you see externally. If you begin to think, well, now I'm getting somewhere. Now I'm getting rid of all that cheap knowledge that my family put in me. Or now I'm beginning to get over all that shoddy religious crap that was fed to me by society. As long as you believe that, you're back on the playing field. You are keeping score. You believe that there is an opposing team. If you get in the position of trying to make radical inquiries, actually ask the hard questions as ordinary people like to talk about, you're dealing more than in the universal, and there are no leagues, national, American, major leagues, minor leagues. There is no league in which you can join. There's nowhere to go play this game. Sometimes it seems like it is, but there is no place to go play it that has any sort of definitive scoreboard up. The stadium does not say, the Bruno Wiedemeyer TKS Memorial Stadium. And as always, if you do in fact find one that says that, trust me, that's not where they're playing the game. Because I know sometimes they do put up signs and say, this is where the game's going on. And it's not. It can't be. Because as soon as there is a scoreboard, as soon as there is the idea of an opposing team, then it's not this. Which makes it, well, look at it another way, since you all enjoyed it last time. It's what makes this the popular pastime that it is. There is no opposing team to it. It cannot play to hometown sentiments. And it doesn't matter what your response might be to yourself, such as, well, there's got to be some kind of hometown sentiments. I mean, I'm an American. I'm a German. I'm French. I'm Anglo-Saxon. I'm Jewish. I'm a Muslim. I'm a man. I'm a woman. I'm tall. I'm short. I'm educated. I've had a hard time with my brain. All of those are hometown sentiments. And all of those are just as perfect as they could be if you live in a hometown. That is, if you're ordinary. But if you think even that is something to be struggled against, do realize you're back playing the game. You're back inside the hometown stadium. It's not a fact of playing against that. It's not wrong to be French. It's not wrong to be German. I always push it too far, don't I? It's not wrong to be Italian. It's not wrong to be Jewish. It's not good to be Catholic. It's irrelevant to a few people, not to everybody else, see? Because now, if some way this kind of information, if one of you tried to get up the public part and get all of humanity's attention and you said something like that, you do realize that you'd just be, I hate to tell you, worse than stoned or attacked. Ignored. Jesus. Because it's patently foolishness to say it's irrelevant, whatever your hometown is, whatever the definition of you is. That is what kind of guy you are. To say that's irrelevant itself has got to be the zenith of irrelevancy. It's got to be, and it is. Because it's very important who you are. Because if you're not somebody, who the hell are you? If you're not who you are, if you're not a male, Anglo-Saxon advertising executive, middle-aged, middle class, if you're not that, what the hell are you? I mean, a person looks down and, well, that's what I am. I'm not absolutely enthralled by it, but that's what I am. And I'll admit it because I'm somewhat philosophical and I've worked a lot on knowing myself. Hey, my breath's taken away. I hardly know what to say. It's not wrong. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant if you're trying to get away from the limited information that the brain can perceive when you're in a stadium, that there is a known contest going on and there are home team sentiments. That's locally prejudicial, not just some kind of religious or racial or sexual prejudice. That's not even what it. That's so minor league that we shouldn't even have to stop and say it. It's to have any home team, hometown sentiments. If you got any, and you think that they're going to run up some kind of new score on the board, that you're going to sit there, scream, wave a banner, holler out insults across the field to those who, God knows why they're there, supporting the visiting team. If you think any of that, no matter how much you drank, whether they're serving drugs there in the stands, whether you decide, no, I've been taking drugs and drinking now for 30 years in the stands, now I understand, I'll fast. I won't eat anything. I'll simply suck air and I'll chant. No matter what you do in the stadium, as long as you have home team sentiments, as long as you have a hometown feel for the game that's going on, nothing new will ever be available. It's just as simple as that. And then the part that made it even more simple, I thought some of you would enjoy, again, is to point out that this kind of stuff, whatever the hell it is, but this kind of stuff has no hometown. And so all ideas that, feeling like, well, what can I hold on to? About the best way to put it, at least on this great holiday, is to say, well, as long as you got anything you can hold on to, right that second, as long as you feel like there's something you can hold on to, you can darn well consider that you're holding on to the wrong thing. Let me write that down so I can hold on to that later. Yeah. Some of you who laugh along with such as that, you should be able to maybe laugh doubly over ones you've laughed at before. Kairou's pointing out that a real revolutionist has no hero. That's not some kind of egomaniacal statement that anybody that try to do this kind of stuff is so superior. So how can you have a hero when there's no game going on? There's nothing to compare it to. Now you start and you think there is. People that think that they might be interested in this kind of stuff. You got no choice. You have to start somewhere, and it's like playing sandlot ball to keep this ungodly symbolism going. Now that I got into baseball, whatever happened to Boog Powell, real heroes? I never knew anything about him. I just like the idea of hearing people up in the stands, hundreds of people going, Boog, Boog. I don't know. And that's not even me. He told me to say that. It's like playing sandlot ball. When you start, everybody has some notion of a hero. Everybody has some notion of something, or you wouldn't try anything. So whatever it is, including ending up being involved with this kind of stuff, somewhere you start out and you thought you had some kind of hero. Buddha or Harold Stassen. Somebody intriguing. But there cannot be a hero, because a hero is based upon there being an opposing team. That there is out-of-town information. And there is out-of-town information, which is, by its own definition, out-of-town information and in opposition to our desires, which are, and of course somebody will say, well, to be more intelligent or more enlightened. No. Now you can say that, but it's not true. Your desire is to win. That's why the intellect is what it is. Within a short span of, still more or less today, of one person's lifetime, you look at the primary evolution, the evolution of everything of humanity except this, then nothing happens of any great consequence within a lifetime. The changes, the drastic changes, if there are any, are here. So the idea of that there is some sort of hero, it's something to be done, is that not that my information is going to become more like the hero, or that if I study the life of somebody, or if I found some group of people studying some secret form of Islam or Judaism or whatever, that this information would not be, regardless of what I just said, your intellect would say, this information would not be, I would not see it as being an interloper. I would welcome it. This is the information I looked for. No. I know people say that, but think about it a second. It is not. Even if the information is seen as being in somehow not readily available here in Chicago. And so I'm not going to just out of hand boo the Mets because when they got different uniforms, they got different accents. It's new information. And so I don't want to do away with the information. I want to learn from it. this out-of-town information I want to absorb. The intellect is not capable of that. If it was, the intellect would not be expanding in man. The secondary world of humanity would not be evolving. What you want is to defeat the new information. You got no choice. That's why I am sticking, at least for a few more minutes, with this baseball symbolism, sports symbolism. You do not want to take the new information. You do not want to run out of the stands in Chicago and say, the Mets. For years I was so dumb I took you guys to be my enemy. But now I understand you know things I don't. And that's what I want. No, no, no. The intellect cannot do that at the ordinary level, back at the stadium level. What you want to do is defeat it. Even to sit down and say, all right, tell me, I'm listening, tell me the Mets philosophy. Or Christians say, all right, tell me all about Islam, anything. And you may listen, especially if you were wired up to pass for an intellectual. And you listen, and you go, yes, 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 yes. Take notes, and then you say, well, if you're through, may I make some, I hope, to be reasonably intelligent, objective comparisons and responses to what you said. But that's not what you're saying. You're saying, now may I choke you? What you're saying is, all right, now it's our inning. Now we're at bat. And people do not go to bat in a baseball game. The team does not come up. You know, the hometown team bats second, as you know. So the out-of-towners, the Mets come up and they go to bat. Let's say they get a couple of runs. Then your town, the Windy City, you show up. First man up. The manager does not come out. Take all this, of course, internally. But the manager does not come out and say, we were expecting to play a competitive game here today, no doubt about it. You people bought your tickets. And he's saying this on the loudspeaker, PA. But he says, after seeing what you Mets have done, this first inning, I don't know, we see the error of our ways, and there's no reason for us to bat. Yeah. We are won over. We are won over by the undeniable validity of your wherewithal. No, no, no. They may still appear to be gentlemen, shake hands and smile, but they come to bat to win. The intellect takes all information that appears to be extrinsic to what it has as being the visiting team. It is the opposition. The only reason I stayed long enough to, as I have on that, was where we were talking about when I first started. This is in direct conflict. Not that they're wrong, but this is in direct wiring, chemical conflict with the way the brain is now, that it believes, it's supposed to, that it is in search of new information. And it will say, especially, a particular segment of life through man. A particular segment will say, not only am I open to new ideas, not only am I interested in them, I am real interested in them. I would travel to foreign places. I would read new books. I'd go to some great effort to get new information. The problem is not new information. The problem is a dearth of new information. I can't find the information I see. And that all sounds very interesting, if not admirable. And it's not true. The intellect cannot do it. It's all the intellect can do to get down to the point of that which appears to be the furthest in the city away from human affairs, such as mathematics, the hard sciences. It's all they can do there, in a sense. All they can do, you can put in quotation marks, I'm just trying to make the point here for you to see it. It's all they can do to let things move along scientifically. Regardless of what you think, they're fistfights inside the Nobel nominating committees. I mean, just because you see pictures of Einstein kind of looking cross-eyed and smiling, you don't know what goes on. Some of you, I guess, do. All I'm trying to get you to see is even in areas that appears to be cold-blooded, objective, scientific, it's very hard for somebody to let go and say, well, perhaps after being confronted, let's say, with a copious amount of evidence, then, let us say, the mathematical community begins to say, well, perhaps under certain conditions, two parallel lines, oh, maybe they could meet. It's all they can do to do that. And there's still people around. I'll bet you that there's a few mathematicians I don't want to pick on particular areas. You can imagine your own in your own mind around some of the Balkan states. Don't write me. But anyway, I bet there's some mathematicians somewhere teaching, maybe in Alabama. Don't get me off the hook. That still go, yeah, I read something about them saying that parallel lines will find them meet in some kind of weird saddle universe or some crap. But no. I mean, we got a guy teaching, finished college, I'll assume even in Alabama, and he still remembers that Euclid was nobody's fool. Because even Pythagoras had that tattooed on his arm that Euclid is nobody's fool. Now, parallel lines do not meet. And plus, the guy, he looks down, whoever wrote that, he'll look down, and chances are he's a foreigner anyway, or at least from up north, and so. It takes a particular kind of very subtle force going on in life. It does happen. The whole point of this was to get you to see that the brain, the way the nervous system is arranged, even in the areas where the brain seems to be of the supreme operational instrument in science, hard science, not social, but even in the hard science, it is not that easy for the collective brains in that area of the city, in the institution of science, for them to take in new information, to let the opposing team, to have the opposing team apparently win, and you, that is the hometown people, not throw a goddamn fit and riot and holler, no, 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 wait a minute, no, 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 no. We changed it. Our games here don't go 9 innings. It's 10, 11. We go 11 innings. Keep going. Or else holler, wait a minute, we got cheated somewhere. Who's keeping score here? Once you get out of that area into what appears to be just ordinary operations of one's intellect, all these ideas about, well, I'm seeking new information. Why else do you think that I buy so many books? Why do I go so many lectures? I'm seeking new information. No, you're not. You're seeking, apparently, at the ordinary level, fresh teams to play. It is a reasonable hobby to fight ennui, intellectual boredom, to go out and you're seeking some sort of new visiting team that you hear, whether there's somebody going to lecture on some new age flim-flam or some idea I never heard about. I'm gonna go see that. I'm gonna go hear what they have to say. But you do not go to hear what somebody has to say to let the visiting team win. Even if you want a real short sidestep, some of you should already know it, even if apparently you learn something from it, it's not as though the person or the idea or this system or this institution beat you, because anything that you go, oh, I got to remember that, I want to write that down. All it is, it's like a play that your team's been working on and you didn't quite have it down. It's like an unassisted double play and you never had it quite down. It's like this guy or this woman went da-da-da-da-da and showed you how to do it. It's like you've been trying, I could never get that chord, I could never figure I've heard it, or I thought I did. And I see what they're doing, they're playing a flatted third up on top an octave away from a natural third. Now! But it's not that the other team won. It's like I was going to run that play. I was going to do that. I almost had it down, but they just showed it to me. So you won. You absorbed it. You took it over. You adopted it. But you don't leave with a feeling that in some way I have really taken new information. It's that I had an idea already, and I beat the guy. I beat the information because I knew that already. And by putting it what I already knew, it's even better than it was. Because he didn't even understand what I already knew. I was just on the verge of doing that. It is still a form that there was an opposing team. To do this kind of stuff, and to see that there is no opposing team, is tricky. You cannot sit in the old stadiums. You cannot operate on any basis where there seems to be opposition to what you think, which is the norm. It's not just something that ordinary people can stop doing, but as long as you're doing that, it is very problematic whether this even exists. Based upon this, in the last few times we were talking, can you begin to see that the necessity of acceptable popular ideas having to play to hometown sentiments, can you see the absolute direct connection between that and the secondary world's need for the human intellect to cut all processes into things specific. It is on a less than local level that all boundaries of all kinds are for the specific purpose of establishing operational things specific. Now, they certainly transfer energy at the ordinary level, and they serve other purposes that we've used as metaphors and symbols before. But from a more universal view, from a less thing-specific view, the very thing-specific in the world of boundaries, all nationalistic boundaries, all religious differences, sports teams, political parties, marriages, alliances, all boundaries are part of the operational process of the intellect cutting up the world of processes, the life of processes, into things specific. There's not a lot to be said, or I'm not going to say a lot. But some of you should see how much of human history, how much of the recollection of your own DNA memory is filled with what appears to be the great wars, the catastrophes, the rumors of wars, the stresses, the threats of stresses that seem to be based upon all of these boundaries. And the more you live in an area of life's body that the intellect is the guiding light, if not the general hospital or all my children, the more it's there, the more the intellect is inclined to respond to, if not say itself, again, we should do away as soon as possible and as much as possible with nationalistic boundaries. If this was a one world with one language and one religion or no religion, then we would finally all be each other's brother. Some segment of humanity has been saying that as long as we've had some segment of humanity. As long as life has been intelligent enough to talk through man, it has had some part of itself going, you know what, all these, of course they didn't use these terms, but it's saying, you know what, all these secondary problems, not the primary problems, not the eat or be et, not the fuck or be fucked, not the primary questions, the secondary questions. Some segment of life's intellect went, from the very beginning, you know, if it wasn't for all these arbitrary boundaries, if it wasn't for there being a line between the French and the Germans, if there wasn't a difference between the language of those living in Pakistan and those living in China, if there wasn't a difference between the color of people's skins in parts of South America compared to other parts of South America, if we could do away with those kind of artificial boundaries, hey, it'd be paradise. What they're saying is, if we could cut out the visiting teams, what they're saying is, if we could cut out the contest where we were all in one big stadium and all playing the same game, there wasn't any real rules and nobody's keeping score, then it would be heaven. There's a reason that life says that. In the same way, there's a reason that life, still in areas where the intellect is more in charge, that it says, wait a minute, we can't shoot people because of behavior, because people are not simply blind, genetic-driven machines. And then people that say that, and life goes, are they still believing that? Are they still saying that? It's like the more they say it, the more it almost becomes true. Almost. At least it becomes almost more true than it does in areas where they don't say that at all. That is where, did you spit in the floor? Yes. That's it. There's no question about, well, why? There's no question about, could we rehabilitate this illegal spitter? He did it, you kill him. But when you get into the area where the intellect is more of that which seems to be the operational center, the guiding light, the more the intellect says that things will be different, that I can expand into areas that may be infinite. But what it is doing while it says that is continuing to draw the boundaries that make the absolute separations, that then it turns right around and says, oh, wait a minute, we would not have these kind of intramural conflicts between humans were it not for these artificial boundaries. Were it not for us believing that the capitalistic system is in direct conflict with a socialistic system, or that the Italians are never ever going to get along with the Albanians. The secondary world would not exist without what appears to be the boundaries, because you would then be dealing with things unspecified. You can see it, if you care to look yourself, you can see it, not only obvious ones of nationalities, races, religions, I mean things that apparently just so obvious that nobody even questions it. They say, well, let's ask hard questions again, but their hard questions are always on the basis nowadays that there is some psychological reason that the Christians and the Muslims cannot get along around, weird enough, especially around Lebanon. What kind of psychological, what kind of seeds of disruption have been planted in the little nippers' minds that grew up being Christians, and their parents says, oh, don't you go over into East Beirut. The Muslims live over there, and they'll kidnap you and chop you up and use you for sandwiches. God, how horrible. We've got to do something. I'm speaking as ordinary, intelligent people, that part of the city. They say, oh, how horrible. And what they're saying is, ooh, how horrible that the human intellect has cut up things, the processes of life, into things specific. That we have created these artificial boundaries between, right down the middle of Beirut, into Christians and Muslims. There is no one, that's the extent of their question. That's the hard questions that life has arranged that will allow the ordinary intellect to ask. That, my goodness, how can we get in here and stop this cycle of religious prejudice? That's not a hard question. Somebody thinks that's a new question. The question is as old as you can find anything written down. The history is as old as your intellect is an operation in your own DNA. The hard question is beyond verbalization, but it's the kind of thing that we were just sort of hinting at last time. The hard question would be, to what ends are things not only arranged in this one example, so that the Christians and Muslims are just fighting over God knows what anymore. You stop them, and you ask somebody, what are you fighting about? I don't know, leave me alone. Why are you shooting at the other people? I don't know, because they live across that, the street that runs down the middle of Beirut, whatever the hell it is. Yeah, well, they're on the other side. I shoot at them. Why? Well, they shoot at me. Now go away, I'm busy. The hard question would be not, why is that going on? The hard question, that is to what ends are things arranged in such a way that not only are they shooting at each other, which is almost nothing. And that's not worthy of much inquiry once you see it. A more interesting question is, to what end? Why are things arranged that this is going on here? And the views that people have of it, that life lets people have, the most intelligent people, the views that let them have of it, is so impertinent that it's almost not even worth any consideration. But why does no one see that? Why did they say, wait a minute, the hard question is this? And they'll have somebody featured on a television show, which, how much more can you be featured and be important in today's life? They bring on a man who was the Deputy Undersecretary of Middle Eastern Affairs in the Carter administration, Mr. So-and-so. And they bring him on. He's glad to be here. He says, tell us, after all these years, we need some sort of insight. Some of us over here, I'm playing a reporter type, that we're just absolutely nonplussed intellectually to fathom why. I mean, it's so foreign to us living here in this pluralistic society of America, many races and religions living here. How is it? We can't understand, how can these people of the same nationalistic background fight over religion, and in a sense our religions are so close to begin with? What's going on? And ex-undersecretary so-and-so says, well, and he begins to talk. And he may say, this is indeed a hard question. And since I have left public office, as a matter of fact, I have not absolutely abandoned my interest. I have traveled over there. I've done extensive reading. I'm part of the Middle Eastern prune think tank right outside of Washington. And we've discussed this, and we've written several white and blue papers on it. And it's a touchy situation, but I think if we're going to solve it, we are going to have to ask the hard questions. And so you think, well, now we're going to get somewhere. I'm going to hear something interesting. But you should know you're not. his hard question is going to be such things as, why do they keep shooting at each other? Or your real hard question is, well, if they're going to continue to do that, what do we think of that? The hard question never arises. You understand, well, you know this one now, us hanging around doing this, some of you tend to forget, but nobody is going to pop up on television. And somebody say, well, that's interesting that you ask about the conflict going on between the Christians and the Muslims there in Beirut. Or you could have used the Protestants and the Catholics in Northern Ireland, or you could have used the Muslims and the Hindus in India. You could have used, and they could go on and on. It's interesting you bring that out, and you ask me what do I think about it, what's going on, and you say that let's get down to hard questions. Let's say the name of this show is not Meet the Press, it's Hard Questions. Nobody's going to show up and say, well, look, if you want a real hard question, that is figuratively speaking, one that I suggest might offer some more resistance in chewing than just regular old cheap double mint, it's how about this? What you're observing is as old as humanity. And suddenly the reporters go, wait a minute, you're right. If look at it this way. If it ain't one thing, it's another. If people are not shooting at each other, Christians and Muslims, it would be tall cavemen and short cavemen throwing rocks at each other. And suddenly, the reporters, and then suddenly it comes out of the TV, out of the airwaves, and it begins to affect the viewing audience. And people go, wait a minute. And it says, if it ain't one thing, it's a goddamn other thing. If it wasn't this, it'd be something else. And people go, wait a minute, I'm beginning to, you're right. Thus has it always been. And they go, yes, you're true. And say, wait a minute, that's nothing though, because all of you knew that was true, didn't you? And all of humanity that was listening go, you're right, we knew it was true, and it's like, we just didn't know we knew it. But now you know it. Yes, we know it. But wait a minute, that's not all. They're ready to applaud, maybe elect him president or something, give him a Pulitzer Prize or maybe a Hershey bar. And he says, no, that's not it. Here's the real thing. And humanity, or at least let's say the American public, are listening, they're almost beside themselves. That not only is this exciting, he said, no, that's nothing. There's even more. And people can't hardly stand it. They said, no, there can't be more. We can't take it. And he said, yes. Not only is this, it's always been this way, it's nothing new, and it never changes. They just move it from one town to another. It's like a traveling league playing a game you never saw. They just move it from Beirut. They go, yes, we can't stand it. And he said, no, there's more. No, he says, trust me. And then here's the hard question, though. He says, now you name the show, I'm going to give you the hard question. And they go, all right, we can't stand it, what is it? And he says, why the hell hadn't anybody ever noticed this? And that's when everybody go, oh. And that's why, of course, this can't happen, because people would go, ooh. Their intellect, you'd have blowouts. They'd just go, pow. You would have brownouts that, at the very least, it is not the way things are arranged. But notice, that would be a hard question. But the rest of the hard questions are nothing. It is just a renaming of the water diet. It is a moving from one town to another. They say, all right, the Mets, all these historic great games between, of course, I don't guess the Mets and the White Sox are that big of rivals, but like the Giants and the Dodgers used to be. Before you people, back when God had the teams arranged like they were supposed to before they moved to the West Coast. That's another story. But well, in fact, I got here. I hate to say it, but a lot of you are too young to remember. Life was pretty good until the Dodgers left Brooklyn, until the Giants moved to California. That's when things began to go. But at any rate, it's just a joke. At any rate, the hard questions are simply apparently moving. Not that people do it, but the teams move from one place to another. Conflict. That if they quit shooting each other, as they quit playing this very serious game, very serious, deadly serious, in Northern Ireland, between the Protestants and the Catholics, between the Irish over there and the intruding British government. If it stops there, if the game stops there and people go, phew, well, now we're getting somewhere. Humanity's coming to their senses. Well, at least the Irish are coming to their senses, and so now we're better off. You do understand, before you know it, God knows what. There'll be some kind of interfraternal conflict of a deadly nature will break out in Buenos Aires over who knows what. Those who live in condos and those who live in private homes. And they'll begin to shoot the place up, and it'll just be just as absolutely insane to people outside that game. But nobody will notice, well, wait a minute, this is the same kind of contest that they were playing 2 years ago in Northern Ireland. Nobody notices that. No, it's not. This is completely, they finished that game. They signed a treaty. It was a marriage. It was an alliance. Now, this is something completely different. That we got settled, but now we're talking about something really insane here. That's the hard question to ordinary humanity. Whereas the real hard question is, doesn't anybody notice right before your very eyes what's going on? What are you talking about, sir? Are you crazy? We're talking about serious matters. The ultimate boundary, by the way, is not between countries, not between races, not between religions, not between, I guess nowadays, if I was going to appear to be really up to date, I'd have to say between the sexes, which we could do another one sometime, but some of you ought to be able to do that real quick on your own to see how far the intellect, I don't mean that it's wrong or foolish, but how far the intellect has now gone in the division of the processes of life into things specific, that now in the more intellectual areas of the world is considered now to be serious to consider the artificial, the unnecessary boundaries, the divisions between the sexes. Now, I know some of it appears to be quite reasonable. It is reasonable because life is using it. But it's more than them saying nowadays, not that the people understand it, but life is even pushing it further in the secondary world, not just that, wait a minute, all we're saying is that women deserve the same pay as men get for the same job. It is more than that. It is the intellect pushing it into areas that heretofore, your grandparents, let's say that they were very intelligent for their day, they would have said, this is insane. Now, wait a minute, there is a difference between the sexes. Well, they're saying that we should eradicate most of the difference between the sexes. You know, you people are nuts. No, the game's just moved from one place to another. At any rate, that would appear to be, if any of you can follow that, see it on your own, that life is really pushing the divisions. It's the establishment of new boundaries. It just appears to be the eradication of boundaries. Or say, well, let's do away. Let's bring the Protestants back into the Catholic Church. Let's in some way make the division between male and female less than it is. That it would be better for us. That's simply the establishment of a new boundary. It's not the eradication of another one. You're going to have to do it on your own. This is going on continually, but I was going to point out the ultimate boundary, since the tape's running out. The ultimate boundary is not nationalistic, not sexual, not economic, not racial, but all that would appear to be about it, wouldn't it? That what greater division could there be than between Germans, the line there, that this is Germany, and right over there is France. Or this is Turkey, and right over there past that is Armenia. And you don't go over there after dark if you're a Turk. Whoever it is, that would appear to be, hey, that's about it. We have such long-held hatreds, a history of animosity between these groups, that this boundary can literally be a matter of life and death. For an Armenian to step over the wrong line, to get over in a Turkish neighborhood after dark, and the Turks have a few drinks, and we all know how us Turks get after a few drinks. Actually, we're pretty decent, but that's just the kind of guys Turks are. But at any rate, that is not the supreme, that is not the ultimate boundary. The ultimate boundary, from a more subversive view, is each person's individual sense of individuality. That is the boundary. That is the frontier. And it is not wrong. But you might care to note, again, that these dreams that humanity has via life's apparent insouciance at times, I think sometimes life looks away from the sports page and maybe looks over at the funnies and lets its mind drift off and lets people here and there go, wait a minute, something's going on. But then life comes back to its senses. But it's the dreams that humanity has had here and there in little pockets that, wait a minute, if there is some superior state, if we could be better than we are in some kind of non-competitive way, I'm just sure. I almost had a dream. It was taking all those aspirins and drinking coffee one time. It was like I had a sensation that the boundaries between people, all these nationalistic, racial, and religious boundaries between people, our deep-seated, yucky, egotistical sense of ourselves would melt into some kind of great, holy, cosmic goo, and we'd all run together, like maybe a big old van of peanut butter turns over and breaks on a hot summer day on asphalt. The dream is there, and the dream has some validity, because the ultimate, the supreme boundary, for reasons very good that I was hoping that you would see by now, that is the nature of the secondary world. There would be no secondary world were it not for the equation of I plus not I. If there were not for the cellular boundary, the nationalistic borders between you and everybody else in the world. Everybody, those that appear to be part of your home team and those that appear to be part of the visiting team. There is a distinct boundary between you and everybody else. If there's not, you wouldn't be sitting here looking at this unless they're showing these tapes in mental hospitals. Funny farms, I think, technically. You cannot be sane, you cannot be reasonable, you cannot be part of the middle class, or the middle part of the bell curve in life. Do you not feel a distinct boundary? It doesn't have to, at all given times, appear to you to be very aggressive or hostile, but there is a distinct boundary between you and everybody that's not you. That is the ultimate division of the processes of life into things specific. What's the most important thing specific in the world? Me, you dumb bastard, me! I'm speaking for everybody. That is the ultimate boundary. That is the final, at least at the three-dimensional level, the supreme cutting up of the processes of life into the human version. Me. Seeing as how we have to stop, I think I'll say, well, perhaps we'll just stop there until next time.